Okay, so we're only going to be here for a short time. I mean, we'll be outside for a while, but we'll only be in the circle for a minute or two, or maybe 3. Let's see how we go. So this morning, day 3 is about teachers, and we're most interested in what makes teachers effective rather than just a good teacher. And there are lots of myths about what makes a good teacher. Ran into one recently who thought if you kept the whole class laughing all the time, that was good teaching. In effect, some people get fed up. They just want a bit of seriousness as well. So we're going to concentrate on teachers today. It would be really impressive if you can relate things to your experience of teachers, so that's you as a learner, and what you're becoming, that's you as a teacher. So this is the meta levels of this course. We're operating as a learner and as a teacher. Now, I know those of you experienced teachers have really probably got this under your belt, but you'll be helpful in this exercise. So, Greta.
As we looked at yesterday, we're moving from dependent to autonomous teacher-student relationships. And so, as facilitators, we start stepping back from now on, and all the other teachers in the room will start doing more and more teaching. So I'm wondering if we could have someone who would like to run through what's on today for everyone.
I'm going to correct.
Thank you.
I'm going to say something to Greta because we've worked together. Don't ask questions and enable people to say no. Someone please step forward and read this if you feel comfortable. Would anyone like to? The whole group can say no thanks. So you're not really giving, you're giving an option to come forward, but not an option to say no. So the word, can anyone suggest a similar wording that invites people without the ability to say no thanks?
Who would like to read?
Yeah, invite someone to come forward to read what's on today. So your language starts to become important. Is that you, Rod?
That's me not saying I'd love to.
Great, thank you.
I'll hold the book.
Thanks,
On that note, Rod, can you just clarify, someone said, would someone like to come forward? Is that effective?
Not usually,
Okay,
because people say no, don't want to.
okay.
It's an opportunity to refuse, and what we're doing is an opportunity to participate.
Okay.
And those who don't want to will not participate. So they're not forced into it, but those who feel willing to step forward will do so. It's a bit like saying, why not use my toothpaste? You know, because I don't want to. Please use my toothpaste if you feel that you'd like to use it. You know, it's a different way of enabling.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Will you notice how brilliantly Greta took that, especially when I worded it wrongly in the first place?
I do it all the time. And so I was like, really? Again? I'm working on it.
So thanks, Greta. I have a question. Would you like me to go one at a time through this? That's how we're going to do this?
No, go all the way
All the way
around.
through, okay.
Yeah.
And what I'd like to say is that normally I would know what's on there and be able to speak to you, so forgive me if I do a little more looking back that way. But starting off in the first session is qualities and roles of effective teachers. And there's some subtext here of how teachers inhibit learning, teachers' ethics, qualities of effective teachers, and natural authority in that first session. In session 2 we have body behaviour and language, and the subtext there is NVC. Would you like to unpack that jargon?
Non-violent communication.
Thank you very much. And then under that heading, of course, of language that works and doesn't work. Our next session in 3 is monitoring and appraising. Then, of course, we're going to be talking about MT2 delivery. Session 4, MT2 delivery, micro teaching, 3 brief, and micro teaching 4 prep time. And lastly, in the evening session, we're going to look at challenging behaviours. Any questions on that? Great.
Thanks, Rod.
Thank you.
Great. Beautifully done.
Thank you. We're going to start with a little activity out here about behaviours that inhibit learning. Like setting up a practical activity next to a main road during peak hour. If everyone could take a moment, just we're thinking about ourselves as learners. What are the behaviours you've experienced as a learner that have inhibited your learning? It might not be what you like and don't like, but what has prevented learning from happening for you? Just take a moment.
So, Greta, do you mean behaviours of the teacher?
Yeah, thank you. We're then going to have a scale between this tree here and the chairs here. Down there is really inhibited my learning. At this end, it didn't really affect me that much. We're going to give an example, let you think about it, and let you move onto that spectrum as to whether you found it very inhibiting or not really that inhibiting for you. So
is
for
it how the teacher presents it, or is it the content, or like is it?
It's around behaviour.
So
today we're looking at behaviours of teachers. Tomorrow we're looking at methods, but this is about us as facilitators, us as teachers, and what behaviours and what qualities we have or don't have. So the first one might be monotony. Right? Can you give it an example of monotony?
Yeah, well now in 1971 Bill Mollison and David got together to develop a permaculture curriculum, talk about permaculture, and they really looked at a whole lot of anthropological papers. And Bill was a teacher at UTAS and David was a student in design at UTAS, and together they sat on a veranda in an old house because they were really hippie.
If monotony if a teacher or a facilitator uses monotony in their speech, if it really affects your learning and inhibits your learning, move towards that end of the spectrum, and if it doesn't, head towards that way.
Yeah, Brenna, judgment and ridicule.
Yeah, sure.
You do the next one. Next one's
Judgment or ridicule. You can use one of us as a bit safer.
Oh my goodness.
The chairs are the furthest to know doesn't affect me.
Yeah. All right.
Check where everyone else is as well.
Great.
It's a bit frightening, isn't it? Okay, go back to circle, please. Brenna.
The next behaviour that we have is judgment or ridicule. Brenna, can you role play judgment or ridicule?
So, Ro, we covered scale and base mapping yesterday.
Yeah,
Quite a dense topic.
yeah, it's big.
Could you just let us know how we convert a block that's about a quarter acre to in a 1 to 200 scale on an A4 piece of paper? Just the few steps that we go through, thanks. For the class today.
Oh, I sort of can't think how to do that.
Tomorrow. Forgotten again. Always forgetting Ro. So we call you this PDC, right? It's all right. I'll explain. You'll get there eventually.
Okay.
All right. If a teacher uses judgment or ridicule in a classroom towards students, does it inhibit your learning or not?
Now, how much does it inhibit your learning? Yeah, that's because it's not so personal about stuff. Yeah, it's not, which is wonderful. Love people who don't get it.
We'll come back down this way. You actually self-absorption. You love being self-absorbed, right?
Yeah, I do, and I love it in others. Okay. Let's see if I can do it.
Okay, the next one we have is self-absorption.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about water, and this is a subject that's interested me immensely all the time, and I find water absolutely incredible. And you need to know about water, but I really know a lot about water. I've had a lot of time on water. Most of my life's been spent in the... I actually grew up in Perth in the beaches and swimming in the Swan River. And I've been very impressed by the way permaculture's done water, and it's my opinion that water is a big subject in permaculture, and I think that we all need to know about permaculture, and I know a lot. Self-absorption?
Oh, self.
Just let them say.
Not just absorption.
Well, I dribbled water into a paper towel.
So is this about the measure of water that we could absorb?
Yeah, you can pick stuff up. Good. Next one's preaching. Preaching. You should. You must. Permaculture
There's no
is.
right or wrong answers. We're just looking at behaviours that inhibit learning or don't, and it's going to be different. Everyone's different for everyone. We'll come back. We're not going to do them all. It's going to take too long.
Well, let's do preaching.
Yeah.
'Cause it's a good one.
Preaching.
Okay.
Would you like to? You can do preaching.
Yeah, she'll be good.
Yeah, you're good at preaching.
Okay.
The next behaviour on our list is preaching.
When we leave this course, every single one of us should go out there and say to everyone we know, become a permie. Because if you're not doing that, you're not a real permie. You want a real permie? Huh? And then, if we haven't all quit our jobs to throw our lives at permaculture, which is what we should do, we must do that at the end of the course, and we're not doing it properly.
Be a teacher, not a preacher.
Okay, so we do not accepting feedback. Could you do that? Jargon's easy. And then we could say what others found from here, which would probably the way they were grouping. Okay, sorry.
So preaching doesn't affect as many people as monotony. That's interesting.
Well, it depends whether, like Charlie said.
Depends whether
Depends
we
whether you
agree
agree
with
with them or not. It's fine.
It's a good one. No, you didn't. It was good. Yeah.
If she was preaching on a different topic, it might have been
reinforce my bias.
These permaculturalists are spending too much time singing. We need to get down to some hard work. You talk all that fair harvest. If we need any time, she loves ridicule.
All right, let's come back.
Not enough creativity. Let's get back to our books.
I love my critique.
Alright, the next one that we're going to use is jargon, the use of jargon. So when we're talking about bioremediation, and we've got lots of different kinds of bioremediation, we've got phytoremediation, we've got microremediation, we can use macrophytes in order to do our phytoremediation, and at the end,
We'll
great,
have plain
really
water.
clear sentences there for everyone to understand.
I literally wasn't even paying attention. It's sort of hard to tell.
Less impactful. Yeah, good.
Great. Come on back. And the last topic that we have on our list here is so it's when, oh wait, where's my notes? Yeah, okay, so the next one on our list is When teachers are reading completely from their notes, or just reading directly out of the book. Oh, no. Or from their PowerPoint.
Or their PowerPoint.
Or their PowerPoint.
Yeah, good. We need to add. What's PD? Oh, really? Well, wouldn't that be develop people well? Look.
Professional development that you go through all the time.
Really?
All right, let's come back into the circle. We've got a little bit of a graph. Stop now.
Got it.
One way to teach this particular part of the course is to have a list of behaviours that inhibit learning and to get everyone to do some self-reflection and then come up to the board and put a dot next to the 3 that they find that inhibit their learning the most. The objective of this session is for everyone to see that there are some universal behaviours that affect a lot of students more than others. We decided to do it in this way because if we had 30 people all coming up and putting their dots on the board, it would take a really long time. And we wanted to do something a bit more in our bodies and outside rather than sitting down. But you can see from the last course.
You're going to have to read them out. Sorry.
Great, thank you. So the first one, the most impactful was monotony. Ollie, can you see which number we had? The second, or we had
too serious and judgment are right up there at 12.
Yep.
Put downs, lack or overload, what's that mean?
Of information.
Lack of information or overload of information are both at 9. Speaking to the board was 7. And then you've got 5s for distracted and self-absorption.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So for a lot of today, what you're going to be doing is being able to observe the impacts of some of these behaviours on a group. So a lot of it involves your language and body behaviour and watching the class to see what's happening with them as people deliver in various ways.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
The poor classroom management comment at the top, is that added in? Is that coming in categories?
Are they common categories?
No, I'm not sure why that's there, because I'm like, that's really annoying. And
So that's been added from the previous course. Brenna Morrow ran. So.
Yeah. And so we added that poor classroom management because the group said we'd like to add that in, please. And as we rewrite the curriculum, when you have comments and interesting statements and things don't work as well, we revise them into the next courses. So it's slightly adaptive, though the core is the same. Okay, so poor classroom management, bad timing, stuff like that. Yeah, thank you for that. That's important.
I find interesting is it depends on what you've been exposed to. So if you've been exposed to really creative facilitation, you find monotony boring. But if you're sitting with a group of farmers and you try to do creative facilitation, it becomes a barrier because they're like, well, this is just your issue. It's just really interesting about what people have been exposed to as far as, in my experience, as far as, and you can shift it slightly, but you can't go too far quickly because you just get resistance.
I think the key to what you're saying though is shifting it.
Yeah.
Because we know that the cooperative stuff actually increases learning more and works more than the actual sort of monotonous lecture style. But I think you're right. Some people need to feel safe at the same time. So to launch straight into stuff that even though we know it's effective, you might have to craft whatever it is you're doing slowly. I don't think it would happen as much in a PDC as it would happen in the context.
Yeah. One of your methods is to bring people into where they are. Just draw a quick picture of where you live or jot down ideas that are reasonable. Bring them into their own personal situation immediately. Okay. Right, let's go.
So we've looked at some of the common behaviours that inhibit learning, and maybe you in a couple of notes we can leave up that list or put that list up on the board. We're done with that. This course is about effective teachers and the qualities and the behaviours of effective teachers. So you can can shake off all the monotony and the boringness and the self-absorption. And there are three main roles that we see covered in an effective teacher. They are a communicator, a manager, and a subject expert. There's a lot to do, as a lot of people in the room know. So if you're not able to do one of those, it's important that you either find a co-teacher who is really good at that, or someone else who can support you as a facilitator in fulfilling part of those roles that you're not the best at. We're going to break into 3 groups and brainstorm the roles and responsibilities within each of those roles. So we've got a subject expert, a manager, and a communicator. We're not going to spend ages on it, maybe about 5 to 10 minutes, and then we'll come back.
Greta, can you just repeat what we're doing in the 3 groups?
Yes, absolutely. We are brainstorming what it means for us as teachers within our role as a subject expert. What do we need to know or do as a subject expert? What's our role and responsibility as a communicator? What are the sorts of things that we need to do or be effective at? And as a manager, when we're facilitating, what are the things that we need to consider in our management, and how might we do that? Can you give an example of a facilitator who also is a manager, or the role of manager?
It's about time.
Yep.
Consider a lot of it's about time. The other is making sure the content is covered, even though you're a subject expert. Someone has to keep an overview of a whole course, or it'll go off. So if you can't have sort of just different people coming in and out, you have to actually manage the course to get the results as well.
Yeah.
So there's quite a lot of management there, which is different from being a subject expert.
Thank you. Yeah, we talked about, or it might have been Sarah. It was Sarah looked at the management of the classroom as a role of the manager or the role of the teacher. You also might need to manage your co-teachers or the site owner. You know, there's lots of different things that we have to manage. What's not clear about the activity?
How do you feel about me throwing a mini spanner in the works?
Oh, today I'm used to it.
I'll just present you with an option and take or leave it.
Thank you.
What do you think if we did 6 groups? So 2 groups on managers with about 4 people each, 2 groups on and 2 groups on.
I'd love it.
Yeah?
Yep. Yeah. Why might smaller groups be more effective than bigger groups, there, Brenna?
Just one, I was feeling like a vibe of a smaller group as a participant, and also I've seen it work effectively in the past, and it's quite a large class, so the 3 group that works when there's 16 enrolled learners might not be as effective in this size group.
Thank you.
Can I just say the research backs that up?
Yep.
So,
What kind of learning?
3
Yeah.
3 or 4 max. And what tends to happen is you have to make the group small enough that this doesn't happen. They talk here and they talk here, and it tends to split. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so smaller groups are more effective.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brenna. Let us just pair up in, what are we doing, 6 groups of 4?
4-ish.
So 4-ish.
I can organise that for you.
If you're organising it, which I'm fine for you to do,
No, I'm sure.
we just don't want you to move up and move around and like that. We'd like to stay local to where people are at the moment. That's cool.
I thought you were doing it that way. I thought we discussed it, we'd have 2 groups of each topic. No, that's cool.
that yet.
No, anyway, it doesn't matter. But what they're seeing is what they're seeing is co-teaching at its best. They're seeing acceptance and change. The real reason for having smaller groups is better participation.
Yeah, which is what I hoped to
Yeah.
say when I said why.
Yeah, that was good.
Shiny brought it in.
Yeah, yeah.
And actually,
She was into tomorrow's work.
let's talk about, we haven't talked about co-teaching and team teaching
No,
yet.
no,
And we need to. And the reason why that worked is because I trust myself.
Yes, yes, yes. And I would trust you if you said something. I'm sorry about this morning. Gosh, they're willing to learn, aren't they? Right in, participating away. Let's see who's leading. Cedric and Wayne, who are the two women in this group?
Seb and Wayne and Jeff and Megan.
Who was it in Megan? Steph.
Yeah, Megan and then Seb.
Yeah, I know Seb. Seb. I've got Cedric from the last course, which is French. Okay. Who's got the pen? Oh, they're going to write in a minute.
How do we want the managers to swap with each other? Or
Yeah.
do we want everyone to just stand up and walk around the room?
Well, the managers can... I think we'll lose people if everyone's walking around the room. Do you mean move to the next thing?
Yeah.
Read it and add something, read it.
They could move to there, they could move to there. So instead of doing the whole room, but we just go...
Round 3. Are the topics right?
Yeah.
They're not two communicators on this side. Communication and...
No, manager, communicator, subject expert.
Okay.
Communicator, subject expert, manager.
I think they should go to the next one, read it all and see if they've got something to add and go to the next one. Read
In
all.
their threes.
In those threes. Of course, we're making it up as we go.
There's just different ways to debrief. If it was a smaller class, we could put it up on the board and get them to mind map.
Yeah.
But it also took longer outside than we necessarily wanted it to.
Yeah.
So if we were getting back on track, we'd be starting authority, power and natural flow in 15 minutes.
Righto. Well, give them a time call and let's monitor. You on track? You on task? Feel free to speak. On task? Feel free to speak. Okay, thanks. Are you on task? You feel free to speak? Good, thanks. On the 2 words, are you on task? Feel free to speak, because I'm now demonstrating monitoring.
So different new information. Yeah.
Right. You're on task? Right, feel free to speak, everyone. Okay.
Everyone's sharing the pen.
Yeah, I know, they're doing brilliantly, but we have to talk to them later about monitoring and bringing the group together and reminding them.
Yeah, but that's like bringing back to the subject matter, subject expert side of it. It's about being able to identify which bits of information and bits of the topic are certain performance. You know what I mean? Because for you as an expert, you've got the full picture, you've got like a couple of minutes of it's gone into your body over years. Yeah. Sound out the depth of your
In a minute, we're going to
stand up and move to the next group within our threes. So just get as many extra things down. Yep, leaving your page. Thank you. Your threes, this group, and I'll help with the facilitation. I just want everyone to know they've got a minute to get their ideas, the last 3 ideas down.
Yeah, we'll sort that out.
Good exercise. Good one.
And also so good to see what works in some groups doesn't work in others.
Yeah. This morning's exercise wasn't bad. It probably needs to be a bit more dynamic somehow, doesn't it? Yeah. Oh. Yep. Right. Put hand up and everyone stand up.
No, they're not moving. I'm moving the paper.
Oh, okay.
Not from them.
Okay.
It's all very well going to feel like an expert in someone has to be time. But if you've never seen so like don't know that live through videos of solar passage system, the internet, things like that, you're like living on
Do you want, do they need the exercise or are they just doing it? Brilliant. They're into it.
And swap it in very quickly.
Right.
The bulk of it should be done.
Yeah, fantastic. How are we going to debrief this? Key points?
Yeah.
It's going to take a while. There'll be quite a few. How can we get it to the most important things about?
Ask one person to summarise the manager.
We have to choose someone who's fairly succinct and clear. Let's see if we can give them an instruction that would work. Would one person please summarise in 3 sentences what they found about the manager for one group, and then you can get the other group to add 3 more sentences. That'd do. It'd be hard to stop them, but it will contain it. Otherwise, there's so much to say.
Yep.
So the objective of this is.
Printing, projectors.
Yeah. So what's good about this, when they get the other groups, they're already prompted as to what to write and add instead of getting another sheet of blank paper and starting again. So it's quite a powerful exercise in prompt.
visual concepts, build network of communication initiatives.
Subject expert.
In a group like this, there's enough knowledge. In one of the courses that I've got, people really struggled with this because they didn't know.
That's right. That's right. If they're too new, this is excellent. So I think we should put them as a method of teaching this in the future because it goes so well on so many scores. It's very, very good. There's real engagement everywhere. You could never get if you were talking. And people haven't worked in groups this big before, have they? In an exercise?
So we've had
so they had
six,
twos.
we've had threes, we've had twos, we've had sevens.
Okay.
Which is great.
It is.
Then they get to consider
tomorrow.
So it is a funny group to monitor because they're all on track all the time.
Yeah, I know.
But it would be good to ask who's holding the pen because most of the same persons hold the pen the whole time.
Those little hints are really useful. Did everyone feel free to contribute? Rather than did everyone contribute? Good, there are great things there. People could just read them off. That would be quick without explanation. And they're only points.
Okay.
Depends, how would you do it?
Well, what we just talked about was the 3 sentences. Summarise it in 3 sentences.
Okay.
What would you like? Keeping in mind time.
Yes. I wonder if it might be quicker for one group just read and others tick off and add anything extra, the second group. So we deal with communication because even 3 sentences can be unstoppable. You know, if they knew how much time we spend trying to give people adequate time and also not time, yeah, see, they're learning. They're explaining and discussing. And it's really important.
Yeah.
But it's only awareness, it's not practice. Anyway, your call. You're the captain. I'll not interrupt. Off you go.
Oh my, I don't
Yeah, go on.
Today.
Hand up and go. Yeah, well.
All right, so much discussion. Great, thank you everyone. We're going to head back to our seats, if that's okay, if you'd like. All my chairs, all of them. It's not a metaphor, Chuck. I think what if I'm saying fire and brand? On fire and brand. Find another one you can have it. Oh, that's you. I'll trade your brand. To summarise this exercise, we'd like one person from each group to pull out the key points and summarise in about 3 sentences the role of a teacher in communication. And then the other group who has communication last can add anything that was different, again in 3 sentences, and we'll move around across the 6 pieces of paper. Would your group like to start?
No.
No. Thank you, Ed. Can your group please start?
It's hard because we were coming in at the end of this.
Let's talk to the whole group. This is keeping the eye contact. So.
It's hard because we're coming in obviously at the end of this, so we're just doing the last little bits of add-ons for this specific one. But communication, so you want us to actually reword it into sentences rather than just...
You can read out dot points if you like, the main ones.
Yeah. Yeah, so communication is looking at how they communicate to the class, including visual posters, maintaining eye contact, reading body language, being a good understander of how people are reacting and responding to the content that's being delivered. They might also be the person that you go to for the debriefing and appraisals. Do you guys want to talk and add anything?
I think there were a couple of things here. One is that the way we were looking at it was perhaps different to the first group, that there's the aspect of communication, which is what we're doing here now in a class with students, but there was also the role of a person who's taken on comms, which might extend to accurately marketing the course in advance. These are the things that we added so that people don't come expecting to make compost tea for 3 days. So there was a couple of levels of communication as well.
I once went to run this course and everyone thought Ro was running it. And then we had Ro zoom in the first morning to welcome everyone, and they thought, oh, we're doing it all on the computer on this little laptop screen. And we found out later that the marketing of the course had not been accurate. It was actually quite uncomfortable to be the facilitator of a course where people were not expecting it to be you. Who was the other communicator team? Yeah. Would you like to add anything to that?
We sort of had 3 categories. One was the physical presentation, like facing the class, speaking clearly, appropriate volume and pace, projecting your voice, writing clearly, making eye contact. Then there was the type of language you used, it had to be appropriate for the group, pacing the content, allowing for revision and checking for learning and understanding. And then there were the techniques that we put into the curriculum, such as using techniques that cover all the different learning styles, and making clear expectations, clear outlines of programs, like you said, so people know what they're getting into, and including everybody.
Thank you.
Comparative research shows that teachers mostly talk to people at the front, forget about people at the back, and talk to the people at the right, and forget about the people on the left. So if you're conscious of that, then you can make sure that you're including everyone.
Okay. Thank you. Subject experts. We have subject experts. This group over here, Pickles, can you...
Yes,
can
I'd
you
love to. We came onto this as the last group and added a little bit onto it. It was big focus on being up to date with content and being transparent about where you received that training and expertise from, and also acknowledging that you don't know everything, acknowledging the limitations to your knowledge, keeping the knowledge grounded in examples so it doesn't remain in theory, and matching the level of information they're giving to the needs of the group. So knowing when to go big level and when to keep it more simple. Yeah, it's hopefully enough.
Thank you. Who else is a subject expert?
Yep. Something on our sheet was to know your stuff, but equally know the limitation of your stuff. So, not being a subject expert on everything, which is an easy trap to fall into, I suppose, if you are a subject expert sometimes. And sharing lived experience is really valuable, which someone who has a lot of lived experience obviously finds easier, and maybe younger subject experts might have a challenge with. And one thing that I noticed between communicator and subject expert, thinking in terms of patterns, was the communicator is kind of the network pattern, with building the connections, and the subject expert is more the dendritic. So it's actually kind of taking that body of knowledge and sending it down the tributary. So that was an interesting observation.
Thank you. I don't think we need everyone's shaking their heads, all straightforward. What about manager? You can see one there right back. Thank you.
So, in a summary of what the manager brings to the table, they are there to, they're kind of responsible for the flow of learning and maintaining that golden thread throughout the whole thing. The way that they do this is by facilitating and organising pack up, pack down the space, acquisition of learning tools, and they ensure that the time frame is maintained and adjusted so that you're meeting the course requirements and potentially not sticking entirely and concretely to the plan, but being flexible in how that plan's achieved. Yeah, that's about it.
Thank you. Who was the subject? Manager.
Really good. We put on there the same sort of things, like organising the teaching space, thinking about access and logistics and that sort of thing, housekeeping, managing class behaviour. Yeah, we were I was sort of wondering, I'm still not sure if that the manager or the communicator does more of that role.
If you're a teacher, then you are with three.
Yes.
Like stopping the kids from bullying each other.
Yeah.
Or one person from dominating.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a management thing?
It's a management within the teaching role.
Yeah, there's two types of managing for me. There was managing the classroom and then there was getting the keys.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, that stuff takes it out of you. Sometimes someone could do all that and you just walk up and do it. That'd be great. So, but you're right.
On that note, there were some monitoring questions that Ro and I came around and asked the group. Does everyone feel comfortable speaking? Are you on topic? Who's holding the pen? These are all group facilitation management techniques that you might use. The way you communicate them, it might be different, but they're tools for managing group dynamics.
And in your PDC, start early with that, because it's in the PDC groups design that they fall apart. So if they've got it in their consciousness, these groups have got it in their consciousness, they feel free to speak. That means I say, would you like to speak, please? And we haven't heard from you. In your group, I address that, becoming conscious, and also staying on topic. And you simply say, are we on topic? So those are things that you start early in the course, and they're conflict resolution tools that are sort of proactive. Coming back, that is a teacher's role to sort of monitor the groups in the first 3 days will get you through the later part very well. In terms of teachers' roles, if you're teaching on your own in a 2-week course, you're probably doing most of this yourself, and you're going to need a couple of days in advance to make sure you've got papers and pens and a classroom that works. If your teams fall down and the classroom isn't fixed or people are not washing up, you just do it. You don't chase around saying your group didn't do this and where are the somethings. You actually start cleaning the classroom or taking in cups and washing cups and doing whatever you have to do, and it's just part of your role to pick up where those other groups are not doing them. In terms of this topic, the roles of a teacher, it's wonderful to have managers who help you. So, I'm like, I just think Brenna taking main control and looking after all this is absolutely fabulous.
It's like my to-do list for the last few weeks.
Yeah, now, so you've had your chance to speak. Mm-hmm. You put it all out there, it's there. The important thing is at the beginning of every topic is, do you want people to know it? Or they need to be aware. In this, we hope when you're running your courses, and we hope there'll be lots more courses from within this group, that you think about these things and you will learn them on the spot, but at least you'll have a little bit of a checklist and understanding of what you might cover. So this is about awareness, it's not about knowing it all. Just clear in your mind where you start. Do people have to know this? No. Do they have to be aware? Yes. So every time you start something, that's your broad understanding before you get to learning objectives. Someone like to comment on that?
It's a little, I think it's a little related in a practical sense for me, given what I currently do. I play the role of all three in the work I do, and I've found over time I've sort of realised that that's too much work, and I've gotten help over the time, and it's been great, but when I have to sort of wear all three hats, something that's been really helpful for me is to put one on really early, like say a month even before I have to be doing the teaching, and I'll get that out of the way really, really early, so then I can just kind of like temporarily take that hat off and then put on the other hat to do the other roles, and I found that's really helpful. Like as soon as I finish a workshop, I'll just print all the resources I need for the next one and forget about it and tick it, and then I'm like, cool, yay, this other person has been helpful for me managing.
Thank you. Yeah, we can't do them all the time, and so knowing our limitations, knowing when to ask for help and support. You can't work full time, run a course and cater for it at the same time. Not possible. Seeing people try and do it, not an effective learning environment. You're taking phone calls in the middle of the class, you're spending all night cooking sourdough for lunch the next day, and you're trying to teach with a clear brain. It doesn't work. So know who to ask for help and when to ask for help, and know what your limitations are, because ultimately it's about creating a healthy and effective learning environment and taking it off yourself and always going back to the students is the most important thing.
Yes, and quite often right at the beginning, if you're on your own, you might say to someone, would you mind helping me? So you can be called out because the kitchen needs to have a discussion about lunch being early or late, or it's all fallen on the floor, what will we do? And you have to be able to not only give the class an activity, but to say to someone, will you just start this next activity? It doesn't stop because you're called out or you're required. Some cases it's officialdom. The camp manager's coming and everyone stands up and salutes, and you go and sit him on a chair and let him talk and get the class to continue. It's that sort of thing. Sometimes you're the distractor so the class can go on. It depends where you are.
I found often offering a subsidised place to someone in the course who can be an offsider works quite well. Like in that someone who can't afford to come for whatever reason, you ask them to could they distribute the papers and wash up the cups or whatever.
Or as a new teacher, offering to be that person for free on someone else's PC is a brilliant way to learn content.
Yeah.
Shani?
Just sorry. So another tip to go on from Stacey's, I've stopped putting out the chairs. So the first person who comes, who's distracting you from doing all those other things, then puts the chairs out, and then they greet the next person, and they then put the chairs out, and so before you know it, you've got the classroom set up, and then they know where to put the chairs at the end of the day. So come up with some jobs that are on that management thing that you can do.
Yeah. If you're extremely pushed through a course, then ask someone else, especially if you've got someone else, to socialise for you. Have a talk to people, be available, go and chat. Jed's very good at that, you know, in Kashmir and everywhere. He'd just go and sit with people and talk, and I think, thank goodness, because I'm busy doing other stuff. And you want the students to have contact and talk to teachers and have that chat and follow up on things they're not sure.
Okay.
I just really think as someone that teaches for a job, it's that those three areas can take up your whole life.
Yep.
And one of the most important things is to draw a really clear boundary for yourself, because there's always more you can do. Pat last night was up making resources, and then it was going again this morning. Like, that wouldn't be sustainable on a longer course. So you need to go, I've got a good enough grasp of the content, I've got the methods that I'm doing, I could do this and 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 this, and I'm going to stop now. And that's harder when you're starting, but I think it's really important. I say to young teachers all the time, don't do that much work, stop, give yourself time, because when you're in more relaxed, lighter place yourself, you're going to be a better teacher than if you're still pulling together all those.
Yeah, and don't micromanage if you can help it. I do a bit, don't I? However, don't give it time to answer. But I had a co-teacher in Lesvos, and there was an organising group there, and they were doing everything beautifully. And someone found out, a co-teacher on that, found out that you could have got photocopies cheaper here, and that if we walked instead of going home in the taxi that they'd organised, you could. We gave them a budget to manage it for us, do the photocopies, do the translations, organise the transport. That local organisation had it. This person kept coming up and saying, but they could get that cheaper, and they could do that. And I kept saying, stop it. It's the local organisation's responsibility. It is not mine. Get butt out of someone else's job. It's not your job. And be very clear. And it happened, I think, in the last course somewhere. I remember saying that's not our job. Our job is to make sure there's a good learning space and good content. It's not our job to talk about or get involved in that. And that is very restful, to know clearly, no, teachers, sometimes you have to do the lot, but often you don't want to be in it. Don't mix it. Okay.
One of the good things to do too is document your process, because like Tamara was saying, when you're a beginner you often forget to write down your process, and if you do write down your process it saves you energy for the next time, so you can tick off. You've already got all your checklists, you've got your... yeah, otherwise you're starting, it's like, what do I have to do? What do I have to do?
I really like the Mother Doc role that you guys have presented to us in this space. We know with a very large group that there's a lot of people that need to be considered, and having those intermediate steps creates that direction for us. We feel safe because there is someone there, but it also acts as a level of support for the people that are doing the teaching, and we know that you're being looked after because that person's there for us and they're there for you.
Yeah, that when we go back to that housekeeping, the original housekeeping poster, we have support people. We didn't talk about it at the time, but it's so important to know, for everyone in the class to know who those support people are, so that you're not the receiver of 30 people's aches and pains and family issues and work problems and everything, because in this environment it is a safe place and we are openly communicating, and as teachers we try and be warm. So it's not uncommon for people to feel comfortable to come and sit down and have a talk to you about what's going on in their life. If you can make it really clear that that's not your job as the lead teacher or the person who's facilitating, and that there's someone else that they can go to, it makes your job a lot easier.
That's big untapped with them.
Yeah, and we didn't say at the time, take your problems to that person, don't bring them to us. No, it's like these are the people who are here to support you.
Yeah. Okay, sometimes we've done a buddy system, so we buddied Europeans with Afghans a bit in the last group so they could follow up and talk to them, but that was also an integrative thing as well. Mm-hmm.
We're going to move on to power dynamics and power versus natural authority. I'm thinking that before we do that, we might just stand up and take a couple of minutes just to stretch, whether your hamstrings or your back or your shoulder.
Would you like to sit at the front, or would you like to stay
I'll
where
sit
you
here.
are?
Okay. So just make sure you're fairly comfortable, and you stretch whatever needs to be stretched. And when you're happy, sit down. Right. Okay, that was a... We'll do some balances later. Now here's an interesting one. This is all about power and authority and natural authority. Is everyone here or did someone leave? We should let them have a pee break, shouldn't we? Does anyone else want a quick pee break? Quick. But Yeah, that's right.
Just a little pot in the middle of the room.
I think that's a good idea. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's not long, but we're going to, this is really important, so we encourage everyone to be here and please not be away too long. Will you start thinking about those things already? We're talking about power, we're talking about authority, and we're talking about natural authority, and they are connected. So if you can start tuning in your brain to what might be the connections and how they might work, that would be pretty good. And then when the others come back, we'll tell them what you will tell them what they were thinking. And we're talking about it mainly as teachers, but you also have other authority as well with regard to sometimes bureaucrats or organisations. And of course, some of you would have put in the roles of teachers is to keep the class safe. Did anyone have that somewhere as a role? Did you? Yeah. What did you have in mind there?
Just that it was a slightly chaotic environment where the kids might want to, windows got broken or they wanted to throw their football inside the room. And I was a fresh teacher, so I was Googling all the time, how do I stop this from happening?
Yeah, how to keep the class safe. So there's physical stuff. I was teaching for Hannah in Tasmania once, and the bushfires were close. So I had my phone, and I said to everyone, the bushfires are close, we may have to evacuate. And if that happens, we go to this place, and please take a minute now to put all your stuff together, your important papers that you'd want to take, and fix it, and then we continue. And I said, I'll give you a report about every 10 minutes, and there will be no danger to anyone. So we maintained that space. Every 10 minutes, I'd say, fires either a bit closer or the fires moved away. But that was utterly my responsibility, totally. It wasn't a class responsibility, it wasn't shared, and it would be my call as a teacher, like not me as Roa, but me as a teacher would be responsible. So that was one of the more extreme situations, but they do exist. They existed in relation to COVID and probably still do with what's coming up, and in relation sometimes to the environment. So there's a safe learning space, and then there's a physical and emotional safety of the class. Okay, so we'll start. What were you thinking about authority and power and natural authority? What came to mind? Let's do a bit of word association. A few minutes.
You can have authority without the power?
Yes, you can. Okay, so we're getting close to natural authority. What was behind your thinking there, Rod?
I'll give a quick example. City Farm corporate volunteers coming in for the day, and I don't know who's who in the zoo. And I asked the crew to do a job, which was to cut some cloth and move a wicking pot. And then I turned around, and then the boss man said, "Can't do that. Can't use a non-retractable thing in the weight blade, and the thing's too heavy." And I went, "Oh, okay, sure, sorry." Walked off. 2 seconds later, turned around, it's done. And the crew did the non-verbal, "We just did it because we can."
Yeah, okay. So there is an authority that can run through the class, and if they disagree, they will run with that. For the sake of this, let's just start, and time. For the sake of this, let's just start with authority. Because you are a teacher and people are pretty willing to be in your class and listen to you and learn, you have some authority. And some of the things we talked about this morning that inhibit learning, we would consider abuse of authority. Abuse of authority in terms of treating people without respect, which is talking down to them, using jargon. But there's another level as well where a class can be manipulated, and that is very dangerous. So it's getting them to listen to me, keeping people after hours. It is known people with great power, popes and potentates and generals and kings, you wait for hours to see them, and waiting is a symbol of power. Keeping people over time is a symbol of power. And it was very interesting, a teacher had recently always kept people at morning tea 15, 20 minutes over. And I had a chat and I said, it's a symbol of exerting power. And it's considered, you know, I'm rougher than these two, they're gentler, a bit arrogant to think that you're more important than someone's having a break, a cup of tea, what they need to do. So people will give you authority right at the beginning because you're the teacher, the authority of your information and the authority to manage the class. And you can lose that authority. I've heard someone stand up and say, I'm so-and-so, a permaculture teacher, I've worked for NATO and I've worked for the UN and I've worked for here and the FAO and the king of this and the princess of that, and you watch the whole class go, ah. So authority, really good authority, is earned and revealed. It isn't asserted immediately right at the beginning. The other thing that people use for power is very often that sarcasm that Brenna demonstrated this morning. So you think you're clever, or wasn't that good? That's misuse of power. And being able to have the students know that they would not be abused in this way starts what you earn. And you earn it by behaviour, you earn it by your knowledge. And you don't declare it up front, it can be revealed slowly. So the things we know for natural authority, this is Steph. Steph, would you read the right-hand branch, please?
Knowing their subject well.
Yes.
Liking and respecting their students.
Yeah, so you will lose your authority if you don't know what you're talking about or you talk down to people. And that's the authority they've come to hear you about. That's the authority they want to learn. Yeah. Would you like to comment on the next one about liking and respecting students?
Yeah, I suppose if you are being disrespectful or you've come with some preconceived ideas about how those students might be, or you're bringing some judgment into it, then you're not going to naturally respect them, and then they're going to probably not appreciate what you're trying to teach them.
Yes, and someone from this... I think that's right, it's creating the safe space, and we take respect as listening and seeing for the purposes of this, for behaviour that we can actually see the behaviour working, that people have seen and heard several times. Okay, someone we haven't heard from over there, who'd like to speak? Following the other side, please.
Keeping personal issues out of the classroom and taking responsibilities for safety and knowledge.
Okay, so how do you see those playing out?
Keeping personal issues out of the classroom, probably more oriented around not showing your emotions, but not being an emotional thing that just happened, not projecting that to your students or others. Taking responsibility for safety and knowledge. It's your responsibility as a teacher to care for your students.
Yeah.
The knowledge that you have.
Okay, so your personal stuff out of the classroom doesn't mean to say I did this or I learnt that in another class, something. It's much more... I had a teacher who'd always say, guess what my children said this morning? Or another can be, guess what my cat did last night? And so once a teacher does that, every student should have the same right to discuss their cat or their children said that was so cute. Or your headache. I've got a terrible headache, I've had a terrible night. That is using the emotion, your emotion, to elicit on your behalf. I see a teacher as being out there at the service of the students and their learning. And although people might look at you as a teacher, it should be the content that's coming through all the time. So if you have your personal issues and explain to the class what's wrong, give them the same right. And within half an hour, you'll have everyone telling you about their sore toe. Everyone would have a sore toe somewhere. And that is also a red herring. So when someone starts, I'd just like to tell you what my dog did this morning, you say, that's lovely, let's put it on the parking sheet. We call that a red herring and a distraction.
Just a question on that. In the context of maybe sharing something from your personal life that might make people uncomfortable, but it's in the context of the subject matter. For example, sharing that you've had maybe a traumatic experience in the past, but it relates to what you're talking about. is there that there's a boundary there, obviously, that can be blurred, but where do you see that being appropriate?
That's really good. I think permaculture content probably doesn't go too much personally unless you make it so. I haven't had, I mean, just to take a silly example, I haven't had a traumatic experience with soil or water, or even banking, even though I had to close down my bank account and the bank was really angry and I was saying, but you're not ethical. And they're saying, yes, but we don't want you to leave, you know. And so that was a personal example of the response you can get when you're closing down your money on unethical banking. It's possibly relevant because it prepares people. But, you know, other stuff is probably best done by students or with students completely off record, privately and off record. Yes.
I also think, I was just thinking then about the kidnapping example last night. Who, I actually just forgot about the kidnapping example because I remembered the language. And the most important part in that, you talked about that you were kidnapped in India, but it was mostly, the story was about the language and the role of language and common language in familiarising people with each other, building relationships and avoiding certain situations. And I think, I don't know, I'm not going to put you on a pedestal, but I think that was an effective use of an example that someone else may go, oh, and then this happened and this happened and this happened and it was terrible and I was very scared, but there's no eliciting of emotional response from people in the room. It's about a teaching moment of using language.
Okay. Someone want to comment on that? Experience, knowledge, thinking? Yes, sorry Shani, you've got the full light behind you so I can't always...
see. I'm just wondering where the place of, and it's probably a bit like what Greta was talking about, but where the place of story as a hook and as a closure between some information fits in that. So you're sharing a personal connection. When the day I discovered that soil had microorganisms in it. Oh my God. And then using
what
it.
What would you think? How would you answer your own question?
Well, I'm feeling vulnerable because I do that a lot.
If it's relevant to the learning, if it highlights something, if it's to elicit, it's exactly what Brenna said, look at me, or wasn't this amazing, then that's your ego. And you can nearly always spot ego because you get that sense of people like being looked at and like the attention on them. And ultimately it needs to be coming back to your content. What is natural authority? How does it work? When can you use an example for the better learning? So if your attention's out there on the group all the time, then not coming back to talk about your situation. It's relevance.
I'm so glad you said that.
I think especially if it's, you know, in the spirit of sharing passion or joy, that's super valid. I do that.
Now that's important. They say teachers do well who put their ethics and values on the table. If you say, I think that's utterly immoral and reprehensible in this situation, it will be appreciated because that degree of self-revelation is helping them define their values, but it's not all about me in a sense. It's not wanting the attention, it's where you stand on those issues. So it's very powerful, but you don't say it often.
I think there's also a value in sharing how, say, you could feel vulnerability, say, as a teacher, but by still keeping a personal boundary. So, say, if you're speaking to a student about, say, a student comes to you and says, oh, I'm feeling really nervous about this presentation and this and that. I think I've personally found it helpful to have a teacher say to me, you know, that's actually really normal, and I've felt really nervous about giving presentations as well. And I don't need to then, you know, that teacher then wouldn't launch into the first time I did a presentation, this happened, da 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 da. So the personal story is not there, but the vulnerability and the relatability, and you know, then I feel really met as an individual. I'm like, oh, actually, it's okay, I'm a human, and this teacher is also human, and if I'm looking up to them and they seem really confident and amazing and such, and if they have felt vulnerable too, that means, that I'm also capable of what they're capable of. So, you know, you can, I think, share vulnerability without sharing the backstory personally.
That's a good question. We'd like to develop.
And it's one I'd like to actually think about for a while. So thank you. At the beginning of a course, by nature of inherent power dynamics, facilitators are given power. They're given authority. It's our responsibility to decide how we use that authority. And there's behaviours that we can embody and display that show that we're moving to natural authority, or we're moving more towards a need for power and control and ego. And so having everyone in small rows sitting on the ground while you're standing in front of the whiteboard and talking for 90 minutes straight is often a sign of someone who wants the attention on them and needs the attention on them and is using that power to hold people in an power imbalance, rather than using that authority as a resource for learning and for taking people on a learning journey to reach them to a place of competency and knowledge and skills development. And in the style of teaching that we believe in, that's our goal, is that we're moving away from an unhealthy power dynamic to one of autonomous equals. And that happens through behaviours and qualities that we inhibit ourselves. I don't think that's the right word, but we're going with it today.
Exhibit.
Exhibit. Thank you very much. There are some behaviours.
Can we just ask, Brenna, why did you rub out good and put effective?
Oh, because funnily enough, last night in the Wollongong course, we've just been speaking about how we don't use the terms good and bad in our permaculture teaching, in best practice teaching, and bang, up comes a poster that says good on it, and we all had a good laugh.
An effective laugh.
An effective and Ro clarified, which I hadn't heard before, and I found it useful, that we can say the word good if there's some evidence for something being good. But it is a useful habit to step out of, and now I catch myself every time I go to say good, I think, ooh, what am I actually trying to say here? What's the essence of it? Effective learning. So we leave it up there as a reminder.
These are some of the behaviours that effective teachers display. Megan, can you read the first one, please? Keep opinions to a minimum. Sarah Faye, can you read the next one?
Don't need to know everything.
What about Just One? Can you see that third one?
Talk 30% or less.
Sam, can you see?
No roles and responsibilities.
Yeah. Stacey?
Sorry. Pointing out errors has no positive effect whatsoever.
Thank you. Brenna, can you read the next one?
Assist student progress.
And Mason, can you see that last one?
Yep. Give honest, continuing praise.
Thank you.
So which ones stand out for you?
Talk less.
What does that mean for your teaching, though? If you're going to speak less, what does it mean for the students?
Only 4.5 minutes of teaching talking this afternoon.
Good goal to set. Yeah, what does it mean for the students? Their engagement. Possibly we did that in the last hour and a half. It probably wasn't much more than that. We've spoken, do you think? Oh, it's hard to tell, but I keep an eye out all the time to make sure I'm not over talking. What else? Yes, please.
I was looking at my page. Some of the people said no roles and responsibilities. I was just like, no roles and responsibilities. But I have in my mind also like maybe not no, but fluid, and so that led me to think of like roles and responsibilities that are adapted to change and are just simply responding to need as opposed to preconceived set roles. No, N-O, set roles. No, your roles.
Yeah.
Sarah? I'll share a small story which I told my group, and I think it applies to this, particularly pointing out areas has no positive effect. And this is about also older, more experienced students having compassion and understanding for younger students in the group or less experienced students. When I did horticulture at TAFE a couple of years ago, it was 12 months worth, and there was a very wide range of students in the class. Myself and one or two other parents were the older ones, and then it went downwards to 17, 16-year-olds who left school. And it was very hard for us learned students to continue a flow of attention because some of the younger students would interject with questions or comments when the teacher was talking, and things that were probably very relevant to them, but in the context of the class didn't fit, didn't flow, but the teacher would then give them an answer or a praised moment, let them have a minute to understand what they needed to and then continue. So I spoke to the teacher afterwards about my frustration of, I just want to listen to you and I can't because these people keep jumping in with things. And he said, I understand your frustration, and in this particular setting, I need to stop and speak to those students because they will just walk out the door and I'll lose them, and I need to give them every possible moment to continue their learning journey. And so that's where us in the higher age or experienced group need to allow that to happen. So he could have shut them up or said, no, that's not relevant, talking, stop interrupting, but in that particular extreme circumstance, it actually kept the class together. So I hope that's relevant to this.
Yes, I agree with that. I would have done the same as that teacher. Would you please just go down and mentally say to yourself, what are the top three there, and then talk to the person beside you for a couple of minutes about why they're significant. Either you think you're doing them well, or you would like to make them a goal over the next couple of days in your work. So would you please just read the list again, hope you can see it to the back, and then talk to someone next to you and see how you might achieve what you want to do.
The top three is in the three at the top, or your top three?
No, your personal top three, Charlie. Your personal.
Right, we're not going to get learning and objectives done, but that was highly effective really in getting so far. So we'll do it straight after lunch.
I'm not going to be here, but you can do it. I'm
I
going to
mightn't be here either. What time's lunch?
12:15 to 1:15.
I'm 11:30 to 1:30.
Me too.
Sorry, when do we start again?
1:15.
I'll finish early and make sure I'm here.
Brenna could do the flow and structure of the PDC.
Righto, we need that list for them. We can do that in a minute possibly, or 10. Yeah, we can do it in morning tea.
So are we
list
going to
of
do
topics.
ethics and objectives?
I would rather do them... We haven't got time, have we? If we're going to respect time, isn't it morning tea now?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, but this is just a debrief and engagement, so I think they need to do this, and we can take a little bit of morning tea.
Yeah.
Then let's get a sheet and put all the topics on it,
Yeah.
and do it
Just
at
write ethics?
1:30.
And ask them in the break to go and find a quiet place and sit down and write their ethics?
No, get them to do it by this afternoon.
Okay.
So
Brenna was saying it's 45 minutes, it's long enough.
all right. I'm just wondering whether that's an encroachment. Let's just ask them to do it sometime before the afternoon session. So, does she want them to come back with their ethics?
No, but just to give them a prompt to write them.
All right, so they should include them in their teaching this afternoon.
That's the
look, aren't they
objectives,
beautiful?
That's the objectives, right, that they're including in their teaching
And their
this afternoon.
ethics, no, ethics, they'll show their ethics to their group this afternoon in teaching, so they need to have them written by the micro-teaching time to include them. So they won't all know each other's ethics, but they'll all have written some ethics. So task between now and micro-teaching, write your ethics and use them this afternoon. So the task is to write your ethics by the time of micro-teaching. Objectives we'll have to do later. It's tied into learning theory.
They're also going to have their objectives. They're in there. But their micro-teaching task this afternoon has explained purpose and learning outcomes.
That's all right. But we'll do it. They will do it at 1:15. This bit. It's too much for now to do learning theory and objectives in 5 minutes, but the ethics they can do, and they don't know how to do the objectives yet. So they don't know how to.
Covered it a little bit, but I wanted to mention it's in this class that effective teachers have ethics.
Okay.
And they have objectives.
All right. I think that's an excellent way to summarise this and go to morning tea. And this is what need to do. Do by micro-teaching. So you deliver them with your micro-teaching. Right. Yeah. Beautiful board work. Right. Okay. And they will also have objectives, and we'll deal with those before the micro-teaching. Now, you have a look. In each group, there's often one person who isn't, oh no, it's changed, always speaking, and the other not so interested.
Yeah.
And
it's often the men who are speaking.
Yeah, it is too. Charlie's looking at the ground. Look at that closed body behaviour there.
They're very strong.
Very, very strong.
All right.
Okay.
It is morning tea time. There are two other behaviours that effective teachers have on display. One is that they have their ethics. They know where they're coming from every time they step into a classroom or into a teaching space. And they have a place to go back to when they've got to make a decision. Between now and this afternoon, if you could find some time to sit down and think about your ethics as a teacher, they're going to change over time potentially. What you write down today doesn't have to stick forever. But consider them and share it at the beginning of your micro teaching this afternoon. Effective teachers also have objectives or learning outcomes. They know where they're going and they know what they want their students to be able to do or explain or make or demonstrate by the end of the session and by the end of the course. And they're always teaching to objectives. We talked about obtaining yield, and in teaching our obtaining yield, it's the skills and competencies and knowledge that we see displayed in the students. We're going to talk about the later, but for now it's break time.